item is another meeting, and the Board of Selectmen financial meeting of May 6, 2020, 7:30 p.m. And it is public access through the Zoom link. And I'll call the meeting to order at 7:36. And we are going to all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
I see that Mike Pelton has joined us.
Yes.
And welcome. Is Mike Hernandez on Zoom yet? Not yet. Okay. Do we have a recording secretary? Could you write to Kevin if you're on? Otherwise, we are being taped and we will record the minutes later by viewing the Zoom. Laura Sienna is on. Thank you. Okay, so everyone except Mike Hernandez, Laura, is in attendance. And I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Oh, there's Mike. Mike has arrived. Hi, Mike. We have a full attendance. Thank you. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. It's Jim.
Seconded by Ralph.
Thank you. Motion made by Jim and seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes for the special meeting of April 7, 2020. Motion to approve.
So
I'll make that
moved. Oh, go ahead.
Motion by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Lou. Any changes, errors, omissions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the regularly scheduled meeting of April 1, 2020. Motion to approve.
So moved.
So-
Made by Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, there you go. Keep it moving.
Keep going, Jim.
Who made the second, please?
Lou Pear.
Lou Pear. Thanks, Lou. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And the last is April 15, 2020. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Jim and seconded by Lou. Any changes? Any errors? Omissions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Under communications and correspondence, there are many communications and correspondence, mostly I think from our governor's office. I have shared with the selectmen many of the items that we have gotten from the governor's office in terms of his special notices to us, as well as his executive orders. And this is certainly very interesting times that we're having. And I want to just say one thing to the public, since we do have quite a few people on the line, and that is if you are having difficulty, particularly with some of basics in terms of food, or are in need or anticipate needs, and you don't know how to access some help that is available, the town certainly does have a generous food bank, and I would call it a COVID bank right now, because some of the needs of our families have changed so much in terms of their employment status. So if you do have questions for yourself, your neighbors, your friends, please reach out and contact my office at 860-342-6715. You can also reach me by email, sbransfield@portlandct.org. And you can always call the food bank itself and leave a message, 860-342-6795. And the food bank is open on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to noon. And we ask that you contact the food bank previous to that time by Wednesday of every week and indicate your needs. But if there's further questions, always, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've had a tremendous amount of contributions, both in food as well as in money. Many people have sent in checks to assist during this time because we all know this is a very difficult time in our country and we want to help one another. So please reach out and pass the good word. Public comment.
No additional public comment at this time.
Thank you, Kevin. The next is request for waiver of bid requirements for the Scranton Communication and Electronics LLC. And I know that I believe Tom Robinson is on the call, and I don't know if you have questions for him. I will read the resolution. For the Board of Selectmen, request for waiver of bid requirements for Scranton Communications and Electronics LLC, whereas the town of Portland will be purchasing police vehicles, and whereas the police vehicles will need to be outfitted with communication, emergency lighting, and other various miscellaneous items, and whereas this equipment to outfit the police vehicles can be supplied and installed by Scranton Communications and Electronics LLC, and Scranton Communications of Middle Haddam, Connecticut has been a long-time vendor and service provider to the town and has provided excellent service at a reasonable cost for police, fire, and public works. Now therefore be it resolved that in the best interest of the town, pursuant to section 1208, subsection 7 of the Portland Charter of the Board of Selectmen hereby waives the bidding requirements of section 1208 of the charter as it pertains to the utilizing of Scranton Communications and Electronics as the vendor to outfit and install electronic and communications equipment for police and other vehicles as needed. In addition, the board authorizes the first selectwoman, Susan S. Bransfield, to act on behalf of the town of Portland to enter into any and all agreements. I'll open it up for discussion and entertain a motion for approval.
I don't have anything from a discussion, but I'll kick the motion off and I guess we can go into discussion if you want.
Okay, Jim's made a
I
motion.
just-
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Who is I?
Rick.
Rick, thank you, Rick. Discussion?
I take it this is a vendor that we use regularly and
Yes.
have for many years, Susan?
Yes, he is. Yes, it is.
And I just have a question on the last line where we're going to authorize first selectwoman to act on behalf of the town to enter in any and all agreements. That's
With, it
15
should be added, I think, with, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I was just thinking, I'm asking, it pertains to just Scranton Communications, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you suggest an amendment?
Well, let's see, to act on behalf of the town of Portland to enter in any and all agreements with Scranton Communications and Electronics LLC.
Okay. Any other suggested changes? Rick,
No.
thank you. Anyone else? All in favor with the resolution with the addition of, at the very end, with Scranton Communications and Electronics LLC, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is fourth quarter transfers, Board of Education. Resolution, Board of Selectmen, May 6, 2020, whereas there is a need for various repair projects at the various school locations, and whereas the repairs, improvements projects may include, but are not limited to, chimney repair at Valley View School, gym exterior roof overhang at Gildersleeve School, HVAC repairs and upgrades district-wide, security repairs upgrades district-wide, exterior painting and interior painting, wallpaper removal district-wide. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby approves the transfer of up to, but no more than, $100,000 to the Board of Education Maintenance Fund account, which is known as Fund Number 11, from available fiscal year 2020 Board of Education appropriations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Jim, is there a second?
I'll second that. Lou?
Second by Lou. Thank you, Lou. And discussion.
Susan,
Yes,
Lou
Lou.
Bear speaking. I think this is a good move on the part of the transfer because we just talked about that, I think the last meeting about the chimney at Valley View. And that's a situation that really needs to be taken care of. And if I have to quote Mike Hernandez again, and I think it's a very important statement he made a few weeks ago, is that there's needs and there's wants, and that is a very important need. We can't let that chimney continue to leak. I'm concerned about the leaking. I'm concerned about the decking of the roof. And of course, any other problems that could arise of water penetrating through the school. So I think this is a very good, wise use of the money and a transfer of the funds.
Thank you.
Susan, Mike Hernandez.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. Wasn't Carl Johnson talking about removing the whole chimney altogether because it's no longer needed for the type of boilers we use? So
Yes.
are we repairing this or are we removing it?
Good question. I think some members of our Board of Education, including our superintendent, is on the call. Can we have a response?
Hi, this is Philip O'Reilly, Superintendent of Schools. Good evening, folks.
Hi, Philip.
Nice to see you all. Mike, it is, I guess, technically a chimney repair. It's the removal of numerous feet of brick to lower it significantly. So, because we believe that's really causing some of our leak issues.
And I guess, and I believe the whole thing will come down in the long run is what the plan is.
I don't think the whole, I don't think the whole thing will come down. I think that we'll have, there will be a portion of it, but I don't know the technical work in the process. I don't know whether it's going to come down completely and they rebuild a small section, or they only bring it down to a certain point and cap it there. But it is, in general, it is, Mike, the idea is that we got to lower it significantly. It's way too high.
Okay, thank you.
Philip, I had a question.
Yes.
This is something that we do look at for the benefit of some of our newer members of the board every year in terms of the needs of the schools. There's always needs for maintenance. And do you anticipate that $100,000 is the appropriate figure? Is there any anticipation of having additional dollars given the fact that just, was it yesterday or was it today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, that we know the schools will not be in the traditional fashion before the end of the month of June. So is there any possibility that you could have more money than $100,000 for this purpose?
Well, when you consider that we're recommending this transfer, we're also exploring the possibilities of allocating money from this year's budget for things that were budgeted in the next year's budget, which we have publicly identified. That becomes, I would say less likely. I can't tell you definitively that way, just because there's so many unknowns, Susan, still
Right.
in our budget. School isn't, school hasn't stopped. We still have 6.5 weeks of school, and have the personnel expenditures and many of the expenditures that are associated with running a school system. So it's hard to tell. I think we've been pretty clear that we anticipate that there will be some savings. This is a transfer that last year we weren't able to make because we didn't have the available funds, and the last couple of years we haven't been able to typically make this transfer. So we're pleased that we can have that amount of money. I don't know if it's possible at the end of the year to go back to the Board of Selectmen if there is additional funds, but certainly we would want to have funds in this Fund 11 for the multitude of maintenance projects.
Yeah, so keep us apprised, and if there's a need to change that or increase, another resolution at another meeting, we'll certainly entertain that.
Sure.
Any other questions? If there are no further discussion matters, all in favor of the resolution as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. The next item is a fourth quarter transfer for the Board of, it says Board of Selectmen School Lunch Fund. I think it should read Board of Education School Lunch Fund.
Yes, mine says Board of Education, BOE School Lunch Fund.
Okay, mine has an error on it.
You want me just to read it?
Sure.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
I'll just put it right in the form of a motion. I make a motion that we approve the Board of Selectmen resolution dated May 6, 2020, fourth quarter transfers, BOE School Lunch Fund. Whereas the Board of Education has identified funds within its general fund budget to transfer to the School Lunch Fund. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby approves the transfer of up to but no more than $37,000 to the School Lunch Fund, Fund 5, from available fiscal year 2020 Board of Education appropriations.
Motion's been made by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Ralph.
Seconded by Ralph. Discussion?
Yeah, did this, because I'm just not familiar with this. So if school's not in session, are we still doing lunches that, the people pick up, or how's this money going to be used, I guess, specifically?
Yeah, they've been serving lunches, and I think it's over 300 the other day.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Susan, I can speak.
Sure, Philip.
So Rick, good question. The short answer is yes, we are still serving lunches, but this isn't for lunches.
Okay.
A couple of things. This is a already town approved amount of money in our budget. And now we need your approval, and we annually need your approval to move that money from our budget into the cafeteria account. And when it's in the cafeteria account, we can then access it for equipment purchases. And right now we have to complete our replacement of our freezer units. And we've done 2 complete refrigerator unit replacements, rooftop units, and we have 1 more to do. We have a servery line at Brownstone School to replace, and numerous other larger projects. And so this is how we use the money, Rick. It's
Okay.
just for those projects. It's our equipment, and we're responsible for that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I will point out that the town charter allows us to make fourth quarter transfers, and the Board of Education is not allowed to do that by charter. It's something that the Board of Selectmen have to do. So whenever there is a change of dollars from one fund to another fund, that responsibility is given to the Board of Selectmen by the charter. And it's typically done in the fourth quarter because by then we're more familiar with what the needs may be. These fourth quarter transfers can also occur subsequent to the end of the fiscal year, and you'll often see those later in the year once the auditors review everything in order to balance out some of the funds and so forth at the end of the year. But at this point, it is a tradition that we look at these dollars for the Board of Education, because any dollars that are remaining in their operating fund, which is part of the general fund at June 30, would go to fund balance as opposed to utilization by the Board of Education. So it's prudent to do this at this point so the Board of Education can do their planning for the next fiscal year and also tie up all of the needs that they have in the fiscal year 2020. So the motion's been made and seconded, and I'll call for further discussion. There being none, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is item 10, transfer of funds, Board of Education capital. Within the capital fund, there is a need to change some of the, it's actually line items within the Board of Education capital. It's not that we're moving from fund to fund, but rather we are telling you how these dollars are now going to be spent within the Board of Education's capital authorization. So Jim, if you'd like to read this one, that'd be helpful.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution from the Board of Selectmen dated May 6, 2020, titled Transfer of Funds Authorization, BOE Capital. Whereas the Board of Education has a need to begin the process to remove aging underground oil tanks to be replaced with above-ground oils at the Brownstone Intermediate School, Valley View School, and Gildersleeve School. And whereas the removal of such underground tanks would eliminate environmental risk for the town, and whereas funds had been previously authorized in the capital plan for generator hookup and BOE system-wide, and whereas the mobile generator that was going to be used for this project has considerable aging, and whereas the emergency generator hookup project is no longer viable due to increased funding needed and the new equipment needed, and whereas the Board of Education is requesting that $38,000 be moved with line item 08-141-000-89010 to project oil tank removal / replacement. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Portland hereby approves the transfer of $38,000 to oil tank removal / replacement from generator hookup with an account number 08-141-000-89010.
I'll second
Is there a
that.
second?
I'll second it, Susan.
Seconded by Lou. Comments, Lou?
Yeah.
Susan, oh,
Yeah,
Lou
just
has
one
the floor
comment I would
first.
like to- Oh, can I speak? Shall I speak? I'm going to speak.
Yes.
Just one change, I think maybe in the second sentence where it says replace with above ground oils. I think that should be oil tank.
I mean, I would agree, but yeah.
Other than that, I think the resolution as read is fine.
Thank you, Lou. Michael
Uh,
Hernandez?
yes, Susan. Now we are replacing these oil tanks at those schools. Didn't we convert all the natural gas? What are the oil tanks being used for?
Good question. Philip?
Sure, they're dual fueled tanks or boilers, I'm sorry.
All right, is there any
No,
particular reason why we went that route?
A recommendation in case of an emergency, Mike, I think that if the gas flow was ever interrupted, we have the capacity on site to keep those buildings warm. That's the
All right, well, thank you.
Welcome.
Good question. Any other questions? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is a discussion on the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. And I put this in on the agenda, particularly because I knew we would have our public hearing, which we had at 7 o'clock tonight. And I thought if there was a need for any further information that the selectmen may have, you could present questions that we will get answers for you. And if you wanted to also have discussion, it gives you the opportunity. The next time we meet will be on the 19th of May, and we'll begin deliberations and begin to try to put together an answer for the budget for fiscal year 2021. You will recall that our schedule calls for another meeting on the 20th of May for deliberations, and then an anticipation of a vote on the 27th of May. You do have until about the middle of June if there's interest in delaying that. Some towns are voting in June because of the volatility of information that we are getting. Some of the questions that came through in some of the discussions on our budget earlier tonight includes the fact that maybe there could be additional revenues, a better idea of the revenues that we do have, and so forth. So just keep that in mind. We'll keep to the schedule as you wish, but you do have some latitude, and we knew that when we put the schedule together. So I'll open it up to the selectmen to begin with.
Yeah, Sue, Mike Pelton. This question is for Tom. Tom, I just don't have the last couple of years, but what's been our grand list increase as a percentage over the last couple of years, and what do we anticipate next year?
That's not, let's see, so the grand list for next year, we anticipated it going up about by $10 million, 778.
And what's that as a percentage?
Mike, I think it's 1.2.
I don't have my calculator. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's our typical increase each year in grand list, if it's increasing or decreasing.
This year was a little bit bigger of an increase than it had been.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit more positive than it had been the previous year.
All right.
In your budget book, in the letter that I sent as of March 2, in terms of revenues, let's see, and the value of the mill, a value of one mill is $839,526, Mike. That's an increase of $10,778 per mill. And the mill rate is based, of course, on your grand list. I thought it was about 1.3%. And I know, Tom, isn't it in that March 2nd draft that we talk about that?
The percentage, we don't put the actual percentage in. We just put the dollar value increase. But it's around about like a 1.3,
Yeah, about 1.3. I want to say last year was about 0.8%, Mike. So it's gone up more this year, fortunately, and that's a good thing. And we look forward to it doing even better in the years to come. That's our hope.
Great. Thank you.
Susan, I have a question for Dr. O'Reilly.
Yes.
I have been looking at and kept your handouts from the last meeting, and where you had given different scenarios of potential savings, and I'm just wondering if, being that we know now we're not going to have students back in the classrooms this school year, does that change your numbers at all? Your projection that you gave us about a week ago?
So it could, Rick, change it, but many of those projections were based on the guess, if you will, that school wouldn't resume because we assumed it wasn't going to resume.
Okay.
And so they're not exact numbers just because, again, we're not through school. Those are estimates, but they are estimating most of them are to the end of the school year.
Okay. And then another question along that line, has there been any further discussion with the bus company about trying to get some sort of credit because of the fact that they haven't been busing
Yes.
students for several months now?
Yeah, our negotiation continues, and last night at the Board of Education in executive session, I did brief the Board of Ed of our progress, albeit slow progress, I should say.
All right. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hey, I have a question, and Philip, it's out to you as well. I know with regards to the funding we've talked about in terms of that, what we voted on to approve security funds from last year's funds that we had a couple weeks ago.
Supplemental, yeah.
And then we're going to have some additional security work that that we'll be doing, or you have proposed in your current budget for the new year. Is there some way we could get some sort of information with regards to that? However, obviously security is a very touchy thing to be sharing, but is there some way we could get a little more details with regards to the security work that's going to occur on those two projects?
Certainly, Ralph.
That would be great.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Should I share it with the entire board?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you. I wanted to point out to the selectmen that you did receive a monthly budget report by way of email. And if you wish to pick up a hard copy of it, let either Michelle or me know, and we'll get you a copy. It's just kind of difficult with the COVID-19. There's not a lot of in and out of our building, but certainly if you need a copy, we'll make sure you get one. But it is in your email. And you remember last time we went over revenues. I don't believe there's anything additional that we know today than what we discussed last time. I will let you know for this fiscal year, Brownstone Exploration Discovery Park did pay in full all of their fees that they anticipate for this year. That includes all of the taxes that they owe, personal property, as well as water and sewer, as well as the fees associated. And they are a substantial tax and fee payer to the town. So we hope that there's some opening that can occur, but as one of our commenters pointed out during the public hearing, they likely will not be able to open as they have in the past. So we're watching that very carefully. I did speak with our state senator recently about revenues from the state. As you know, the state revenues are in question. In fact, he's also a first selectman, and he is anticipating tax anticipation notes and approval from his board of selectmen and board of finance in order to have additional dollars to help bridge any gaps that may occur in terms of taxes received. In terms of revenues, I asked, does he anticipate any changes in revenues from what the budget as you have in your book, which is based on the governor's numbers? Of course, he can't guarantee, but he didn't indicate any knowledge of anything different that they can tell us at this point. But some of the questions came up and some of the comments came up about the use of fund balance. It's not something that we do because it does make holes in your budget for the next year. And it makes it difficult, of course, to then be able to have a 2022 budget. If you have a large amount that's taken from fund balance, you have to make that up in some capacity, and you typically don't do that the next year. So to budget utilizing fund balance is certainly your prerogative, but it is something that we caution, and we need to be very cognizant that it's not it is a one-shot deal, and it makes difficulty going forward. So as we look at the budget, and I know you're scrutinizing every dollar that you can, and any anticipation of expenditures that are saved this year certainly do help us for next year.
Yeah, could I just speak for a second about that?
I'm sorry, could you hold on 1 minute, David? Okay, we are going to, thank you, David, reminded me that our state senator is going to be speaking with us on our podcast this week. So I encourage everybody to listen. We'll probably have it up. Kevin usually gets it ready for us on either later the same day, which is either late Thursday or early Friday. So hopefully he'll give us some insight. Thanks for that reminder, Dave and Kevin. Ralph, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just was going to make, following up to your comment about using our fund balance. You and I have obviously, we've talked about it, and I still stick to my opinion of belief on the use of the rainy day fund should be on the things that I'm speaking to you can't do it for operational type costs, but shortage on revenue such as that for Exploration Park, I'd feel a little more comfortable with taking that approach, because you would anticipate or certainly hope that it's a 1-year loss of revenue, and that could be made up next year when they hopefully open with a regular schedule. I guess I do realize though, it seems like we have a lot of money there, but certainly that percentage also influences what your ratings are. And, we do, our current budget proposed is assuming a very high, I think a very extremely high payoff in terms of tax revenue. And I do get nervous because we don't know the ramifications of how bad this situation is going to be. So I think it was like 98.5% you're basing in the belief that you're going to see your taxes come in at that rate. I do worry about delinquency being a greater number than that. And then where you're going to go, the only place you can go is to fund balance. So it's a touchy thing. You could start going through that fund balance probably pretty quickly if you ran into those type of issues. So, and that's probably what Norm may have been speaking of in terms of trying to have a backup plan in case something goes awry with tax revenue.
Correct.
Susan?
Yes, Tom.
May I interject something?
Yes.
Two things. One, you brought up the payment from Brownstone. The report that you guys all have in your inbox does not have that in it yet. That payment was dated for April, but the deposit was made in May. So you won't see that in your report. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I just wanted to, just to kind of support what you guys are talking about with not utilizing fund balance, it's just a quick discussion there. So we had the unassigned fund balance as of June 19, it was $6.646 million. But you then had water and sewer deficits of $747,648 and water of $511,221. So in totality, you have to count those deficits against that general fund. So although the general fund itself is 19%, when you take that out, it's about a 15.5%. We've approved about another $610,000 utilization. So that brings it to $477,386.33, which brings it down to a 13.8%. We've put so far in the next year's budget another $300,000, which brings you down to $477,633, which is a 12.9%. So as you can see, is a very slippery slope, a very quick utilization. It's not a lot of money in the fund balance. It's a strong fund balance, but it's not a lot of dollar value because we are a smaller town. So We don't have a large budget. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Tom.
Susan or Tom,
Yes.
probably Susan, when you talked about the exploration part, were you indicating that they may not open it all this year? And if that's the case, then all the revenue, like some years they paid $400,000, are we not going to not count on that revenue at all? Or because I thought last meeting you said something about we were going to kind of figure they were going to maybe produce half of their normal revenue.
Well, we certainly don't know for certain. I don't know how the governor's orders will affect outdoor recreation. I know there was some indication that some outdoor recreation will open. Their personal property taxes would exist regardless. Now, that's not part of the fees, Rick.
Right.
The taxes that they pay. That hopefully would remain because it's their personal property that's taxed on that. They will open. They're doing some improvements on their properties that are there, and they haven't definitely indicated what they'll be able to do. As soon as I get more information, I will share that.
Okay. All right.
We're exploring some ideas, not anywhere near those numbers, but we're exploring some ideas that may be able to be done on the riverfront property where we had parking in the past. There may be some types of activities that could occur there, again, depending on this virus and the ability of groups of people, whether or not there could be food trucks in that area, whether or not there could be some pop-up businesses that could occur on occasion. That's another possibility that Mary Dickerson is looking at. But it's just so hard to be able to tell you exactly what's going to happen. That's why I was being conservative last time when I said, initially, you're probably not going to see revenue there of any near the amount that we have received. However, we didn't cut the entire amount because to do so would be very difficult in terms of our budget. What we do anticipate and what we do every year, and it's no different coming up this year, we look at expenditures and we know what we've passed in the budget, what the town passes in a budget, we keep to that. And I try very hard, along with our directors and our finance office, to not spend money. And that's why we've been able to have a fund balance growth, because we do not spend what we anticipate we would spend if we don't need to. And we've had some good years with revenue as well. So those years where we have good revenue, those years where we can reduce expenditures, we do so. And next year's not going to be any different. What's going to be different is how those expenditures are going to be. I mean, in terms of schools, I can't tell you that the numbers that the school presents will be too much or will be too little, depending on the mechanism of education, which may change. There's one example. Another example is in terms of how we maintain our buildings. We've been very careful about cleaning. We're doing a yeoman's job. Our staff are doing a great job of keeping our buildings, draining the HVAC system, making sure that it is clean, making sure that the buildings themselves are clean. And I know the schools are going through the same activities. Those do cost more dollars. In terms of the protective equipment, we've been fortunate to get a lot of it given to us by the state and federal governments. But Bob Shea is working diligently to make certain that our supplies are maintained, but it may get to the point where we have to purchase some of that. So it's a fluid year coming up because we're experiencing it right now. And I encourage this board to meet frequently with the Board of Education in terms of expenditures and allocation of our revenues. Things are not going to be as you may think they are. They may be better, they may not be as good. But I think it behooves us to work together because with almost 63% of the budget as the Board of Education, I think we need to be very diligent in making sure that while needs are met, that we are also making a valiant effort together to save whenever we can. So I would invite, I know many of the Board of Ed members are on the call. I would invite us all to schedule meetings so that we're working together toward the achievement of improvements and maintenance of our town.
Susan, while Tom's still here, Tom Robinson, Tom, regarding the fund balance, you mentioned that, we have to take into consideration the water and sewer deficit. But what were the other items? You mentioned a couple other items, and I was trying to follow you, but I didn't quite. If you could just go over that again, trying to get a better understanding of how some of the other sort of liabilities we have on that.
Sure. So as of the June 30, 19, it was the unassigned fund balance of the general fund. You have that at the 6.646 million. Then you have the water and sewer deficits at that point. Right. Then you guys just recently approved the supplemental appropriation of $610,000 for the capital items to be purchased.
Right.
So that's a utilization of fund balance.
Okay.
So that would have an impact. And then in the fiscal year 21 budget, already we budget a use of fund balance of $300,000, which is the yearly amount that we budget for that. Many times we are able to not utilize that and actually have money due to positive revenues and positive controls on expenditures, either via cost savings on different things that we buy, people that retire during the year where there's positions that are not filled, just other various types of savings and or like revenue positives. As in last fiscal year, we had a positive bond sale premium, which was a large number. We had the $10 million from the bond. We had a high interest rates, as interest rates were very high that year. So that much higher than they've been in many of the years before. So those are some of the things that cause a positive effect. But to talk about those are the four items that just those quick four items, get you from a 19% position to a possible 13% to 12.9% position. So I just wanted to explain those items.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing to remember is that for this fiscal year, Rick, education cost sharing, the grant is $4.452 million. It's anticipated to go up slightly for next year. That is the largest grant in the operating general fund that we receive from the state of Connecticut. And a few years ago, when the state was experiencing difficulty balancing its budget, Governor Malloy at one point suggested we wouldn't get $1 of that.
Yeah.
So that is of concern, and that is why I'm encouraging the board to be so aware of the grants that come in, as well as the tax revenues and other revenues that come in, and balancing that with our expenditures. And if we can save, we save. And if we can shore up revenues, we shore them up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Susan, I have a question.
Yes,
Lou
Lou.
speaking. Just a question for Tom and also for Philip, is that maybe soon or maybe within a week or so, is there a way that or you can kind of figure out what things that we have, what other money we have left over that could be used to pre-purchase things for next year, whether they be the Board of Ed or the Board of Selectmen. And I think that if in fact we can pre-purchase some things from dollars we have this year, that will reduce obviously the budget for next year. So I think we would like to see if we can reduce it from where it is now, the total budget. It'll help us, I think it'll position us in a better spot for how much of the rainy day fund we may need. And we don't know how much we'll need. Obviously, that'll all depend on the revenue that we get from taxes and any other things that we don't know about. It's possible that the governor may give us exactly what we need. And then again, the state is in trouble too. So we don't know how much money we're getting from the state. We don't know what the revenue sources from the taxpayers will be. We don't know what the exploration park is going to do. So my question to Tom and to Philip is that if there's any other monies within a week or two that you think could be there, could be used for pre-purchasing, that would help us reduce the budget requests for next year.
I can speak to, from our standpoint and probably from the board standpoint too, but I mean, that's extremely difficult to ever come up with that type of an item. We monitor everything as we go along. Currently, I mean, the board has their allotment. They're obviously allowed to utilize their allotment. The town, we're watching revenues and watching expenditures. We've been holding expenditures as we watch revenue. If the latest report, we're 686,000 below our revenue estimate right now, and that's excluding the 300,000 for the use of fund balance, excluding the $610,000 use of fund balance. So from the town side, we've been in a holding pattern in watching as we watch this effect, as well as as we go through that. So I mean, we're doing our diligence to hold the line. I know the Board of Ed has their ability to use all of their fund allotment, and we're continuing to watch that and monitor from the town side.
Lou, I told the board, this is Philip, I told the board last night that we would continue to monitor our spending, and that I would be able to give them some more updates on our projected cost savings at their next meeting or by the end of the month.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Tom.
So, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Susan, just another quick question. Did you say earlier that now we're not gonna be required, or what's how to put it? The governor's given some leeway onto when we have to approve our budget?
Well, my understanding, it's as of June 15 is what I understand.
Okay, that's kind of what I was trying to get out. All right. Thank you.
And I was speaking with a fellow first selectman, and he was saying that our company that sends out the tax bills likes to get the number by June 11 or June 12, if possible. He was waiting to set the mill rate. There's a two-step process. One is to approve your expenditures and your budget, and then which you estimate your revenues. And then you set the mill rate, which is that piece of the revenues that would correspond to your expenditures. So the setting of the mill rate has to occur within, I believe the charter asks for a week. I'll double check myself, but I believe that's what the charter says, after the budget is passed.
Hello, Susan.
Yes, Tom.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is critical for the operations of the town, where we get the information to the tax reps, where the tax quality, so that they can prepare the bills, get them out, and then therefore we do not delay cash flow in July. We really need that to have cash flow in July. So it would be we really want to get it where we can get our, budget approved, get the number out, then internally be able to open. There's many things that the town and the Board of Ed have to do to get the budget updated and loaded into the system, and then have certain people, there's certain bills that need to get ready to roll right as July goes on in the new year. So it would be very important to, get the budget passed and then get it where we can get the bills out to the residents and then move the process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say that while we understand the needs within our various departments in the town, we also recognize as a board the importance of balancing these needs with the ability of people to pay. There are many people out of work and many people not certain of their livelihood going forward. So it is something, and the contemplation of how we charge taxes and whether or not the people paying the taxes can pay them at the due date. And as you know, I'll repeat that this board said that if you pay within 90 days of the due date of July 1, you won't be charged 18% interest if it's late, but rather an annual interest rate of 3%, which is a help to those folks that may need longer to pay their tax bill. But I don't want to, for one moment, not acknowledge that the people that pay the bills, many of them are having difficulty. And we have to recognize that, and they may need to pay at a pace that is not what they're used to. Their pace may be rapid in the past, but there may be some of our residents that have to pay over time. And that's why Tom is pointing out the importance of getting the bills out at the appropriate time and that we have appropriate cash flow. And it's certainly with good consideration that this board will proceed as the month goes on in terms of setting their budget as well as the mill rate. And any comments from the public that are on the Zoom call or those that perhaps will review this later? As always, send information to the selectmen and to me. Our website does list all of the selectmen's email addresses. If you can't find all of them, I certainly pass on to them all the information that's shared with us. And if you're ready, we will move on. Any appointments to boards and commissions tonight? Excuse me. There being none. Refund of excess payments.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we refund the amount of $11 to Daniel Roberts.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next item, status reports. Ralph?
I could give an update on the park because we had a big step that was completed. Last week, the fitness circuit was fully installed, and Dorita Construction has mulched and put drains, under drains in that area, and also mulched it. So it's pretty much complete. They have done some reseeding in some areas that were damaged by construction. So we'll see how that comes along. There is power now into the building. The power is up and running there. When I spoke to Dorita the last time, they indicated that that they were waiting on some final plumbing work that had to be done in the building. So they're waiting on the plumbing. And I know that Dorita has talked about that the company that that'll have to do the firing up of the splash pad, they will, I forgot if at the time I talked to him about a couple weeks ago, he didn't have a specific date, but he indicated that it would be sometime later in May, I think, that they would be able to come in fire up the splash pad to make sure that it's functioning as we had anticipated. The other thing that we've done is that, we had some excess brownstone that was sitting over at the salt shed from previous projects that were done in town. And we actually utilized 9 of those pieces that were good sized pieces to put around the park in strategic areas that would be natural seating. So we've added those pieces of brownstone in place. And we also at that point selected a different piece that we would use. We had an initial piece in place, the signage that would be at the entrance, a brownstone piece that would have the name of the park. And we actually selected a new piece, a bigger piece that we thought was more appropriate. That's been put in the front, and I've conveyed the name of the park to the contractor and the engineer so that they can work towards getting the signage done on the entryway. Jim Tripp, our captain of our drone, and I went out to the park this past weekend and did get some new drone shots, and hopefully in the next few days I'll get them up specifically about the fitness circuit certainly, but maybe some high overview shots of the park, and I'll put them out there and give people an update. I mean, obviously it's frustrating because we're going to complete this project in May in all likelihood, and unfortunately we're going to have to come up with an alternate strategy of what that means for the town in terms of having some sort of a opening, or if there is an opening, or what it'll mean for in general and usage. We'll have to see. There'll certainly be more discussions, and it certainly will tie to what we hear from the state or what we decide locally in terms of how we're going to reopen facilities. So it's exciting, but it's got to be restrained, which really is tough.
Any questions for Ralph? Do you have a date for opening?
Well, we do have a meeting in a couple of weeks, the park committee. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we have a ribbon cutting committee on that group, but we haven't met yet, and obviously there's a great amount of uncertainty to it. So we'll probably be discussing options at that when we meet to see what possibly could we do. Like I said, I would anticipate at the completion of May that park is going to be complete, and Rita Construction would be interested in probably passing it over to the town. We're just going to have to decide what that means and how we provide usage of it to the town.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Susan, I have one thing I would like to share with the board and
Yes.
people that are online tonight, is that on Thursday, we're expecting to have a conference call with a solar installer, and Andy Bauer has initiated this activity where we're planning to look and investigate the possibility of having a solar array at the transfer station. And then if there's any other places in town that would work well, this solar installer will probably be able to give us information on that. On another piece of information, the Airline Trails Census, which is working with the DEP and the University of Connecticut. There was a conference call the other day, and one of the things that came out of that were some of the positive usage of the trail, and all of the trails that are in Connecticut are experience at least 100 to 150% participation over a previous year. So that's a good thing, and it's good that people can get out and get on the trails, and the trails are there to be used. There also was a very nice article in the Connecticut Magazine about the Airline Trail, as well as other trails within the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Lou.
You're welcome.
I have been trying to let folks know when I get information from Chatham Health District as far as the COVID-19 cases in Portland, as of today, there are 52 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and there have been 12 deaths. So a moment of silence, please, for the people that we have lost. As we do on occasion, we also recognize some of people that have passed away. There's been many recently, and I learned today that one of our very prominent businesswomen, Lori Peterson, passed away today. And Lori, as the branch manager of Liberty Bank, touched many of our lives for many, many years. And she was a wonderful contributor to our community, as is her husband, who was a member of the Board of Education. And we have a moment of silence in honor of our friend Lori. There are many other people as well, and we keep them in our thoughts and in our best wishes for their families. So thank you for your efforts to make sure we're remembering all of our friends here and those that may not be with us anymore. Any other status reports? Any public comment, Kevin?
No additional public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Under informal discussion, I wanted to talk briefly about the Reentry Committee, the reentry efforts, I should say, that every town, as well as every state in our country, are going to be going through in terms of how are we going to manage our businesses, how are we going to manage our services, from the library to town hall to visiting some of our parks, participating in sports. There's many, many aspects. And many of them involve, I think, very important decisions that we need to make as a community. And I am proposing, at least at this point, that the Reentry Committee be the Board of Selectmen. I think that the 7 of us are very aware of the needs of our community. Each of you have been elected, and you serve countless hours in terms of managing our town. So I'm proposing that this Reentry Committee be you, and that Ralph Zampano, our Deputy First Selectman, and I, as your First Selectman, do a lot of the legwork in terms of getting the research, probably more questions that will come to you than answers. But I think we need to be prepared as we re-enter and make sure that our community is safe as possible and that our economy gets back up and running, as well as all of the other services, including education and services, our library, and other aspects. So I'll just open that up for a bit with you to see if you concur with that information.
I mean, personally, I think that's a good idea. I think there's a lot of diversity of experience on this board, and it's, you know, from business community and a lot of the other components of the community. So I know I'd like to be involved in that as well. So I'm glad we're going to be able to do it that way.
Well, I also know that a lot of the decisions are going to be fiscal. A lot of the decisions will be policy, and I think that it is information that you need. And I might add that in terms of some of these Zoom meetings, they actually produce the opportunity for our community to really learn a lot. And a lot of information can be shared with them in this way. And I think each of you being out in the community as you are, information will come to you. I certainly know that as ad hoc members will be every employee, as well as our directors of our town and all our volunteer boards and commissions. So if it's an education issue, the Board of Education will assist us. If it's an issue associated with the library board will help us, and so forth. So I think the way our town is organized, and when you think about the way our charter is written, you are responsible for all of the policy decisions as the Board of Selectmen. As first selectman, I implement those policies, and we need to stick with the charter's intent. So more to come on that. I'll be sending you probably many emails. Many of them have a lot of good information. I don't expect that you can read every word of those emails, but I think you'll begin to get the idea of some of what our other towns are doing and what the state is doing to assist us in this reentry. I hope that we come out stronger on the other side of this crisis. I believe that we will. And there's many things that we have to look forward to. Any other informal discussion?
Yes, Susan?
Yes.
It's Rick. So I have two things. One's a question. I know the library's closed, but where are we at with the remodeling that was being done there? How's that?
Yeah, it's going very well. All of the flooring is accomplished. All of it was repainted. All of the carpeting is in. And I know all of the library staff is working to reorganize everything within the library. And there is new lighting. The furniture has not arrived yet, as far as I know, and the front desk is still being assembled. But I haven't visited yet. Janet Nochek has told me that things are going very well on that project.
Very good. The other thing, and you may not have, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, is we did get a response from Kelsey Wentling of the Connecticut River Conservancy about the couple of river access points that we've been talking about in the NDVA study. And you and and Lou, one of us will have to get back to her on the paperwork. I think we may have to re-sign it.
Okay.
Because she's got to make that change in there that regarding the dockage, and if we change any of the wording, it has to be re-signed.
Re-signed, okay.
So
I'll touch base with you tomorrow on that.
Okay, fine.
Thanks. I would like a vote on the reentry committee. If you would nominate yourselves to be the reentry committee, that the Board of Selectmen be the COVID-19 reentry committee. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Ralph, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jim? And you'll learn more about it as time goes. I know that you gentlemen will do a fine job in helping our community re-enter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. I have nothing on the follow-up items, so if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Seconded by Rick.
Mike Pelton.
No, Mike Pelton, sorry. Your voices sound the same.
We both spoke up at the same time. Mike, you can have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, motion by Jim Tripp and seconded by Mike Pelton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's 8:50. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Susan. Good night, everybody.
Aye.